Hey guys, for this task, your goal is to create a trigger door animation. Basically, your final project is going to look like this. We're just going to have a little rollerball that we're just going to have a little door that's going to open up, and it's going to just go through the door, and then when it leaves the area, the animation plays and it goes back in, and then we can come back and play the animation again. It opens the door and we can move right along. Okay, very simple but very practical kind of example of how you can use animation and the animator inside of Unity to create small interactive objects. So for this one, instead of doing it as a step-by-step instructional, I think at this point you should be able to do each of the steps yourself without me holding your hand, but I will give you a complete breakdown of all the parts necessary and what you're going to need to do in order to create this. So first thing is first, we're going to need to have a door. Okay, so the door, I just made one really simply in Maya. Okay, is just basically three boxes. A box here that I've combined, did a polycube mesh combine, just snapped it on the axis, and this is nothing but the frame of the door. The second piece is this tall box here in the middle. Again, everything's kind of just nicely snapped, and you see there's a single key here, and all it does is frames 1 through 60, it plays up and it goes down, just almost like a piston. Okay, window, animation editor, graph editor. If you look at my curve, it's just the translate Y, and it's real simple, just up and down. All I did was do the alignment here, just so that it opens up a little bit faster and then slows down as it reaches the top, just to kind of give a neat performance there. Okay, that's all we're looking for. In order to get this out, what I ended up doing was I just selected the object after deleting history and freezing the transforms, due to file, and then I did an export selection, and then I exported out as an FBX. The only thing you need to make sure you have enabled is that if you go under the animation tab here, make sure that animation is checked. Okay, if you don't do that, you won't get your animation and it won't work. So really simple. You just key your frames here to make the animation of the door going up and the door going down. Okay, once you do that, then you can bring it into Unity, and you'll end up with a door. And it should start with this screen right here, where you'll have model rig, animation, and materials. The animation type for this is either going to be generic or legacy even, but we'll just stick with generic for the moment. The model, in order to keep it from being tiny, I actually scaled my model up to 100 times. Depending on how your export settings are in Maya, you may or may not need to adjust this, but just really simply set it to 100, made it a good size. So the animation tab is where we'll do the most work for this. And so what you'll probably have when you first come in is you'll have this thing that's going to say take one. Okay, you can change these names to be whatever you want them to be inside of Unity, and when we get into humanoid animation, you'll find that there's a lot of stuff in here that we can use, but it basically breaks down to where at least on generic, we have the name of the animation, we have a time slider, and a little preview window down here. Okay, and we can add events, masks, do all sorts of neat extra stuff. But for this example, all we're going to want to do is if you hit play, you'll be able to see it play the entire animation. Okay, and what we would want to do is break this into 3 chunks. As you can see, I have an open, a close, and a closed. So what I ended up doing, if I was going to make another closed, so let's say I make closed 2, is I want to go to the frames where the door is open and closed. Well, the way I set mine up, that start would be 30 and the end would be 60. And so if you look at me playing this animation now, you'll see that it starts at the top and plays down like that. Okay, hit apply and it will apply the animation. So by adding new takes, we can break up the animation. So I added an open for the open animation, close for the door closing, and then a closed state, which is just start one to end one. So it's just that single frame. So that this gives us an idle, okay? And in this case, the idle is going to be the door shut, okay? We could do one as far as the door open as well if we wanted to, but because the door in this case is going to default as closed at the start, we'll just have a closed. I mean, you can go back and add an open if you want to, and just have it frame. I believe that would be at frame 30, and just have it be that one frame there at frame 30. So that's the animation tab. Yes, we have materials, we have our rig, we have our model. So what I've ended up doing was I added this into the scene, okay? And it's simply created as the transform, the animator, and a box collider, and then this little door script. So you can see all my parts and pieces down here. So by default, it will not have an avatar or a controller. And so what we're going to need to do is to create a controller. In this case, I have the door controller here. Just go to right click, create animator controller, and then assign that to your door. Okay, the animation controller is where all our logic, our state logic, will be. Okay, and that's if you select this, I can go to animator right here, and this is my completed animator for this object. All these states, or all these animators, have these tags to them. You're going to have an entry, an exit, and an any state. And basically what these things allow you to do is entry is always going to be by default. So your entry will always go into your next state, which is going to be your idle state. Okay, it's the default state. Whenever the game first starts running, the animator controller, when it's active, will go straight to whatever this default state is. You can change that by set as layer default state to the different states, depending upon what you want or what you need. Inside here, you can see that we have the motion, the speed, and more stuff here with transitions that we'll get into. Any state is really nifty if, for example, you have a character that could get killed or get in, or if you have a character that can get into a state at any point in time. You can assign stuff to any state and then call that via a function call and have them immediately go into that animation, no matter what else they were doing. Again, very, very useful for creating deaths and things. So the very first thing I'm going to do is have the entry, have closed, an open, and a closed. And I can really easily create these states either by dragging in the animation like this, or creating a state like this. We have options with sub-state machines. We have new blend trees, clips, that kind of stuff. Right now we're just keeping this basic. So what I'm going to do is select these, hit the delete key, and get rid of them. So if I need to connect these things together, I can right click and do make transition, and it gives me this little arrow that I can drag to things. Okay, and basically what that allows us to do is create a logic. Okay, so right now the first thing I have is this thing that says closed, which is the door, the motion closed for the closed object. It's going to transition into open. Open is going to play the animation, and then it'll close. If I click on the transitions, you can actually see a preview animation of what each one is doing. Okay, and so this is going to close and then go back into the closed state. Okay, the next thing, by default, you'll be able, in layers mode, you'll see a base layer. We're also going to need parameters. Now I've added an open and a close, and these things here with the little dots are a special kind of boolean called a trigger. So by clicking on this little button, I can add floats, ints, bools, or triggers. We're going to use triggers at the moment because for this, because what we're going to do is have the trigger turn on, and then when it runs the transition, it'll turn back, so it resets itself. We don't have to reset it in code. It will it'll go where it says, oh, set this bool to true. Once it's run through that active, it'll turn itself back on again. Those are called triggers. So this is going to be our animation controller that we'll create with our motions. So you can see the open, the close, and then the closed. Now what you'll see here is I have these transitions, and the transitions for these guys have what's called a condition. And once you add a parameter, you can click the little plus here and add a condition. Go ahead and get rid of that. But it's just a little plus key, and you can add the transition condition. So what this basically means is that the closed animation is going to play just this closed animation until something happens to cause it to transition to the next state. In this case, the trigger open has to be true. It's like an if statement. Once the condition open is true, it will then transition and play the open animation. Okay, the way the open animation is set up is that it will not transition right now to the closed state until the close condition is true. Okay, and then close actually doesn't have a condition. Once it finishes the close animation, it just has an exit time enabled, so that it just it goes in transitions after that amount of time back into the closed state. Okay, let's see if I can show you this just as kind of a demonstration. The neat thing about the state machine is that when you play, you'll be able to see. So you can see the animation is playing there, the blue status bar, and then as I enter the area, open is going to play, and then when I leave the area, close is going to play, and then it transitions back to closed. So open, leave the area, close, down to closed. All right, that's the way the state machine works. So how do we get this to work in code? Well, there's this one script we have here called the door script. So if we look at our door, we have an animator, we have a box collider, and the door script. Well, the door script is actually fairly simple. And we have our update that we don't really need. We have a start, and we're declaring one private variable of a private animator anim. Okay, the key to this is on void start, we're going to do anim equals get component animator. This basically just assigns the component animator of the object into this variable anim so that we can work with it. The next two are almost copies of each other. We have a void on trigger enter, okay, and then a void on trigger exit. Both of these are looking for the player. So once the rollerball, which is set tagged as player, enters the trigger box, okay, which if you look at the door, we have a box collider, is set to trigger. It's of a size that's just kind of in the general area, almost like an automatic door would be in real life. Kind of around the door. And I've added 2 debug logs just to check to make sure these things are firing. And then what we're going to do is we do the get component animator dot set trigger open, or in the other case, set trigger close. And what this does is when the trigger enters, by calling the get component animator set trigger, whatever is in this, whatever this string is, needs to match the name in your animator of your parameter exactly. Okay, and that enables and will set these things. So you can use this function call right here to set bools, to set floats, to set them to whatever you really want them to be. This is how you'll find that a lot of the mechanism-driven characters work, where they have horizontal or vertical axes that are set in the update that's passing information back from the script into the animator. Okay, so this is all the logic that we have. So again, it's really simple. Private animator anim, on trigger enter, on trigger exit, and then we're just doing a compare tag if statement, and then we're doing a get component animator set trigger. So this is the core. This is just a core script that you would need to have any kind of logic going into objects in your world. So now my door object, I'm going to open this up, and you'll see that we have a door and a bunch of p cubes. Okay, some of these are just transforms, but some of them are actual objects. So if I click on this p cube 4, you'll see that I've added a mesh collider to it of the mesh of the p cube 4, and that's what's going to give me my walls. Because it's separated in the middle, I use the mesh collider instead of a box collider. But for the door cube, I actually just use a box collider on it just to keep it a little simpler. That way when the door's closed, your character will bounce into it and will bounce off. You can't really use the box collider for this base door object because it's really just a transform holder. So by assigning a box collider with the trigger to it, we can go through and queue everything else. Alright, so last but not least, to get the rollerball in here, it's just a matter of asset, import package, characters, and then select everything that you need. In this case, all I enabled was rollerball. Okay. Build a little scene, set your camera up. I just set it up in the viewport and then went to game object align with view, just so I have my nice little viewport. And then if you look as we exit and leave, if I go to my console here, you'll see it'll open and then it'll close. And so we can watch it in the animator over here, and you will also see it in the debug log here. And there you go. Simple animation controlled game logic with state machines. This is also tying in how to do animation inside of Maya and then bringing it into Unity. Hope this has been helpful.